Welcome to our on-strip, at-home audio training series. Today we are talking to Valerie Alston with the Ready Resilient program on Fort Bragg to talk about some resiliency skills for our athletes and our families. Our on-strip, at-home video and audio training series are being brought to you by the following sponsors. Fox Bookkeeping, helping small business owners and entrepreneurs to run their businesses with confidence by helping them know what the score is. Contact Fox Bookkeeping at 910-849-0232 or email at foxbookkeeper@gmail.com. Fox Bookkeeping can also be found on Facebook. Matthew Woods Voiceover, a professional New York-based voiceover artist with many years of stage experience. From audiobooks to commercials, Matthew Woods Voiceover provides an attentive ear and a fine attention to detail through the spoken word. Visit MatthewWoodsVO.com. And now on with our show.
Okay, we're good.
It says Valerie Alston is recording. Oh, awesome. and I could probably edit that out. All right. Okay, so let's go start. Hi, everyone. This is Coach Gerhardt. We have a guest joining us today for something that we want to talk about, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Val. I do sports psychology, performance psychology at the Ready and Resilient Performance Center with soldiers in the Army.
And what we're partly going to be talking about today is resiliency. Resiliency is definitely important for athletes because not everything goes our way. You know, sometimes we're winning everything, we're scoring the points, but sometimes we're not. Whether it's something we're doing, something our opponent's doing, or maybe the referee's doing. But there's been plenty of times as athletes, we just need to be able to bounce back. And that's really what resiliency is, right, Valerie? Just being able to bounce back from adversity?
Yeah, so it's a combination of absolutely being able to bounce back from adversity when life knocks you down, being able to get back up. But it's also the other half of the equation, which is being able to thrive and be at your best. There's times you just need to survive and get through the moment, and that's part of being resilient. And then there's times where things are going fine, but there's more to life. Yeah, you want to get better, you want to grow, and resilience helps you with that too.
And how does that play into what you do and what soldiers do?
Well, it's a combination of things. One, being a soldier is a pretty hard life. You move often, obviously, just going to war or being, the training schedule, long hours. It's not an easy life. Right. And so having the mental and emotional skills to handle that stress effectively is really important. Just helping them live as good life as possible given their environment. And it also helps them perform better under pressure. And, for soldiers, sometimes that's the difference between life and death. So we want to make sure that they have all the mental tools that they need to be at their best when it matters the most.
And of course, as athletes, it's not life and death for us, but resiliency always comes into play, not just for what they do, but for athletes in sports. But not just those, but people in their day-to-day life, especially now what we're facing with COVID-19 and possibly having to stay home. The parents that are having to stay home for the first time and help educate their children at home, that's completely new for them. I'm sure that's a little bit stressful.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a lot stressful. Or even those of them that whether they have to work from home and then also try to teach their kids, or if they're,
there's a lot of unknown.
They don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of unknown, a lot of not sure what's going to happen.
So in my last email to the athletes and our families and our parents, which is available online too, I talked a little bit about diaphragmatic breathing, and that's just one of the resiliency skills that we learned to help us sometimes calm down, to help us focus, to help us make better decisions. And so we talked a little bit about that in our last email. So I wanted to kind of continue this conversation with the athletes and some of our families on resiliency skills that not only definitely helps them and our athletes in their competition or training, but something that, our families can use too on their day-to-day basis. So one of the ones I want to talk about today was a skill called put it in perspective. So put in perspective. Could you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so putting it in perspective is a skill that you use when you find that your brain is starting to do some catastrophic thinking. So catastrophic thinking is when your brain has gone to the worst case scenario, whether it was a real bad thing that just happened or maybe it was really minor, but for whatever reason, something triggered you and you are spiraling. Worst case scenarios, you're stuck in those types of thoughts and you're just paralyzed. You're unable to take purposeful action in any kind of way.
And as an athlete, and I've seen our fencers, that happens all the time. Now, you mentioned catastrophic thinking, and so if I remember correctly in my training, there's 3 types of catastrophic thinking. The first one we'll talk about just kind of how to apply it for everyone, not athletes, and then we'll talk about how it applies as a fencer. The first one is downward spiral, right?
Yes. So downward spiral is when your brain, when it starts thinking worst case scenarios, it starts to tell a story. So for example, let's say you got a quiz back in class and you saw a grade much lower than you wanted. So maybe you start thinking, oh my gosh, now my grade's going to be impacted. And if I don't pass this class, then I'm going to have to take summer school. And if I have to take summer school, then I'm not going to be able to get that job that I want. I'm not going to be able to save money for college. And if I can't save money for college, I'm not going to be able to afford it. I'm going to be in debt for the rest of my life. I'm going to have to live with mom and dad. And how can I start my own family? And,
it just gets progressively worse, right?
Yep.
And I can tell you, I am the best at that. I excel at downward spiral. I'm really good at trying to seeing one thing and just kind of get it worse. And for the fencer, it could be like, okay, I lost that bout. What have I been training this whole time for? My mom's going to take me out of fencing. I love fencing. And if I can't do that, how can I do well in school? I'm not going to get into college, and kind of progress the same thing you said. I'm not going to have a family, and I'm going to be poor, and I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to die alone, right? And my brain does that automatically so fast that I have to stop myself from doing a downward spiral, because it'll take over my thoughts.
Yeah, it's like a runaway train, just keep going.
So the next one is the next catastrophic thinking that someone might have is circling.
Yeah. So circling is probably the least severe, in the sense that the types of thoughts you're having don't necessarily get worse and worse.
Right.
But you just have 1 to 2 thoughts that are kind of about the same thing, but you just can't let go.
Right.
So something like, again, let's go with the quiz example. You just got a bad quiz grade and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail the class now.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do? I'm going to fail this class. Oh my gosh, now my grade's going to be impacted. I'm going to fail this class.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily get worse, but it just
on one idea.
Yeah, in that saying, you just can't get off. It's like a broken record, right? You just can't get off that.
Broken record. We're dating ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's see how many kids understand that analogy.
I don't even know what to use anymore.
I don't know.
MP3 skips? I don't know.
Right.
Nope, I got nothing.
So I'm trying to think of one either too. I can't think. Or when you're stuck on buffering on a Netflix video, just kind of, especially on Disney Plus. I'm sorry, we're kind of going on a tangent here, but for a fencer, it could be like we're on a strip and you do something, or you try an attack, or you try some defensive attack, and nothing is going your way. Like, not that you're hitting, but the referee is not calling things that you think they should be seeing. And it could be like, I'm going to do an attack, but it's not going to work because he's not going to see that anyway. There's a bad referee, or I could try this defense, but that's not going to work. He's just a bad referee. I'm not going to be able to get through this bout. This referee is the worst. I just kind of keep going back to that idea that no matter what I do, it's a bad referee. I'm not going to win. Right. So is that a pretty decent example?
Yeah, so you're stuck in that one spot. Doesn't necessarily get worse, but you can't.
You're still buffering.
Yeah.
So the last catastrophic thinking is scattershot. And for the last one, could you describe that one?
Yeah, so scattershot is like a shotgun blast. So all of the worst case thoughts that you're having are about whatever triggered you to have the worst case thoughts, but they're not necessarily related to each other. They're all over the place. So go back to our quiz example. Maybe you get a bad grade on a quiz and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail this class. And oh, my parents are going to be so mad at me.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do summer school.
Right.
Oh, my friends are going to make fun of me.
They're not necessarily related.
Yeah, each thought isn't related to each other, but they are related to the initial reason why you started catastrophic thinking.
So for example of fencing, maybe this time not in a competition setting. Maybe we're training. I failed. Not failed, but I messed up that skill with my partner. I wore the wrong shoes today. This not look good. Oh, Jane over there is looking at me weird. I thought I looked cool. So now I'm just kind of bouncing all over the place, and I'm not focusing on working on whatever it is to get better, right?
Yeah, and something that is related to why ever you started catastrophizing in the first place.
Right. So we have our catastrophic thinking, and one of the first steps is to realize that you're in one of these categories of catastrophic thinking, right?
Yeah. If you don't even recognize it's happening, it's going to be hard to be able to use the skill we're getting ready to talk about.
Right. So the skill that we need to employ now is put it in perspective.
Correct.
Now that we've recognized that we're doing some catastrophic thinking, we need to put it in perspective. So how do we do that?
So the first step in putting it in perspective is just to recognize that you're doing the catastrophic thinking.
Right.
And to do what we call capturing the worst case. So if you actually have time, maybe pulling out a piece of paper and literally writing down everything that's in your head, all the worst case thoughts that are in your head. If you don't have the time to sit down and write, maybe it's between bouts, or maybe it's, at a break during practice or whatever. Right. But just letting it all out of your head. Just capturing all the stuff that's going in your head.
Let's use for an easy example. The kids' school has been canceled for the next 3 weeks. This is a real situation for definitely all of our families, because almost all my athletes are kids in school. And we've got some definitely homeschool families, which might not affect them. But let's say for an example, for a family whose child is now at home, worst case scenario, and we'll bounce off each other on this one. Worst case scenario, they're out of school for the rest of the year.
Yeah, they're out of school. They're going to put their learning behind. I have no idea how to teach them what they need to know.
Right.
What are they going to do?
I don't have the materials. Maybe my internet's not fast enough, or we only have one laptop or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said, definitely if you have time, writing down all the worst case scenarios. And for fencers and athletes, sometimes they don't have to write it down. These are things I think I train them to do, is to be able to identify what's wrong immediately. You have to figure out what's wrong. And so in this case, trying to identify, okay, what's the worst case scenario for me? In a short amount of time, I need to be able to think, I'm not going to win this bout, or I'm going to lose 15-2. I'm not going to progress to eliminations, or I'm going to lose in the first eliminations. I'm not going to win this competition. Those are all definitely worst case scenarios from a fencer's perspective. So the next step would be to do what?
So because you're catastrophizing, you're generating a lot of anxiety.
That's a word that I always have a hard time saying, catastrophizing.
Yeah, catastrophizing, it's a fun word. But because you're doing that, you're generating lots of anxiety, your body's getting super tense, you're probably, heart rate's through the roof, your breathing is all chaotic, and so it's really, really hard to calm down for that, to think clearly. So the next step is to actually purposely be silly. We call it generating the best case.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do, the whole point of this, is simply just to help you gain some positive emotion, because there's a lot of research about this, that when you experience a positive emotion, it helps calm your body back down.
Right.
And if your body is not calm, it is really hard to think clearly.
Right.
So doing something to generate some positive emotion, whether that's thinking about the silliest thing you've seen in the last 4 days, or, if you imagining Coach Gerhardt taking a foil to to the bad place, and
It's happened.
yeah, it's like, oh, like just imagining that, if that makes you laugh.
They don't have to imagine that.
It's happened maybe. So anything, you could watch a kitty video, think about petting puppies. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be relevant to the situation, but you think about something that makes you smile, makes you laugh, so that you can calm your body down, so that you can do the next step, which is to identify what's most likely. And
I remember one time a friend of mine, when I was helping him out, between touches or between when there was a break, he'd just say, "Tell me a joke," and that was his way of getting himself out of his head. He wanted me to tell him a joke, and that just kind of got himself out of the head long enough so he can get back into the game.
Yeah, perfect.
And so we've talked about generating the worst case scenario, generating best case scenarios, or something just to make you laugh, or just to get you out of the dark depression that you might be in. And so what would be the next step?
Then the next step is coming back to reality. So this is where you're identifying the most likely. These might be some positive things, they might be some negative things, but it's whatever's plausible given whatever the scenario was. So if we're working, for instance, you have a bad ref and they're not making the calls that you expected them to make.
Right.
You might have to deal with, I'm not going to get all the points that I should.
Definitely.
Or, you know what? So the other player is going to notice it and they're going to call it instead. Or the coach is going to do their job and make sure that the umpire understands that was a point, So it's just whatever the realistic, or, you know what? He's not going to call any of these points and I just have to do something different.
Right. Instead of, 2 lights, I've got to, I'm sorry, I'm using some fencing terminology here, but I've got to one light this. So there is no question. I can't give him an opportunity to try to make a decision that goes either way. I have to make it one touch so he doesn't have to try to make the decision. But yeah, definitely, you've got to plan to get yourself out of the hole. Maybe the plan doesn't work, but you try to go with that plan, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's so after you've identified the most likely scenarios, what you're trying to do is, all right, what is my plan for if the referee never makes a call the way he's supposed to? What am I going to do? What's the if he only makes a few of them, or so for each of those eventual realities, you take a moment to think, okay, here's what I'm going to do to overcome that. And that gets you moving in a positive direction. It gets you out of that stuck place that you tend to get when you're catastrophizing. It gets you moving forward and hopefully gets you some momentum to start being more effective problem solving, just learning from mistakes, or just basically recognizing that the world is not, in fact, ending. You're going to be okay.
We will get through this. Maybe we might have to socially isolate a little bit longer. But hopefully, good Lord willing, we'll get through this. Everyone has to be able to do their best, right? And sometimes we just have to do what we have to do. Like in this example, some of us may have to telework, some of us may have to do more social isolation, so we can't go hang out at Barnes & Noble or something like that. But definitely in the world of sports, in the world of fencing, some of this can be done over time while you're training. And you played sports before too, right?
Oh yeah, I was a college softball player.
Right. So you've also done Taekwondo. Did you do it competitively?
I never sparred for point other than to earn my black belt and stuff. Right. I did some sparring, but I never competed.
Oh, very.
That was just fun for me.
So definitely these are resiliency skills that we can employ in training, and sometimes these are skills that we can employ in the heat of the moment or in competitions. So those are some of the resiliency skills that definitely we're using within the Army, and I felt that it was something pertinent to fencing as well. There's some other skills that I'd love to talk about, and hopefully Ms. Valerie will have some time to join us again to talk about some of the other resiliency skills that we can employ now that we have don't have the ability to be in classes or to be in training. But I hope you guys enjoyed the the skill or some resiliency skills, and this one called Put It in Perspective. So just kind of quick sum up, put it in perspective, understanding when you're in catastrophic thinking. So there's 3 types of catastrophic thinking. There's downward spiral, circling, and scattershot, right?
Correct.
And then once you've identified that you're in catastrophic thinking, you've got to put it in perspective.
Yep.
And step 1, generate the worst case scenario.
Capture the worst case. Your head is already there.
Capture the worst case scenario. Step 2,
generate positive emotion.
Generate positive emotions. And step 3,
identify realistic, most likely situations.
Identify a realistic, most likely situation, what's probably going to happen. And step 4,
then you make a plan.
Make a plan.
Only the things in the most likely.
Got it. Only things that you developed in your most likely. Very good. Well, hopefully that helps not only for our families and their day-to-day. It doesn't have to be about fencing, doesn't have to be about sports, but definitely it can be applied to sports as well, and definitely fencing. So thank you, Valerie, for your time. Thank you for joining us. Again, hopefully we'll have another audio podcast or whatever that we can talk about later on, just specifically about resilience. Any last words, Valerie?
No, I'm looking forward to it. Good luck, y'all. Remember.
Thank you, and everyone take care.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed our On Strip at Home audio series. Thanks again to our On Strip at Home training series sponsors, Fox Bookkeeping and Matthew Woods Voiceover. Visit our On Strip at Home training series on our website, allamericanfencing.com, On Strip at Home, for more information about our sponsors.